Alright, so now I'm going to do a review on Blacksad, I guess you could say issue 2, Arctic Nation. Now, like I said in the previous video, for those who did not watch that, I got this as in one big hardcover trade of all the issues that were it's a book series that is internationally well received, and it's been only 2 years ago, was it, the 3 stories of this character, Blacksad, they were converted to English only 2 years ago, and now a fourth one's out. And this is the second story. I just did a review on the first story, so let's talk a bit about Arctic Nation. Arctic Nation is a story where Blacksad heads out to the far north and comes to a little town on behalf of a school teacher in a little town called The Line. And The Line is pretty much a white supremacist controlled town. It's pretty much controlled by this group called the Arctic North. The Arctic North are they're like a combination of the KKK and the Third Reich. They're basically every white supremacist group you could think of. That's what in this comic book the Arctic Nation is. And yes, this is an anthropomorphic comic, and all the white supremacist animals are all white-furred animals. Yeah. And they hate anything that doesn't have, white fur on them. And they especially hate Blacksad because he's mostly a black cat. And the reason why Blacksad is here is because, on behalf of a school teacher, like I said earlier, he's here to look for a little girl who has been kidnapped, and the teacher has pretty much hired him to go looking for him. This is an introduction of John's, that's his first name, John's sidekick through the story, Weeks. Weeks there's a funny backstory to why he's called Weeks, but he's a little reporter, he's a fox, basically. He's a ferret, and he's a reporter for a gossip newspaper. And at first, Blacksad doesn't really care much for him, but in the end, he becomes like his pseudo-sidekick. So, this is a good story. Probably, I liked it a lot more, and not to say Somewhere Within the Shadows was a bad story, but Arctic Nation was a hell of a bigger story. This, at the end of the story, I really don't want to spoil a lot for Arctic Nation, but I will say this. The plot involving all of the characters and how it all ties in will blow your mind, and you will go, oh shit. Well, at least that's how it was for me. In here, John follows the trail, I'll just call him Blacksad follows the trail of the kidnapped girl, and it leads him all the way up to to the police chief, his name is Kurup. And there is a backstory behind him that will make you go, yeah, you got what you deserve, buddy. When you find out what his backstory is, and how it ties into this kidnapped girl and this white supremacist group, it's really interesting. Like I said, also, it really brings more of the animal side, because like I said, they're using anthropomorphic characters in here, and they also bring in since, he knows fully well he's a cat, and because, like I said before in the last comic, this is not like a furry comic. This is a true crime novel story, and it really follows through. But they use their animal senses, like sense of smell, heightened sense of sight. It's just really interesting of how they do this. They also bring in a anthropomorphic version of the Black Panthers. Weirdly enough, there was not a single Black Panther in this group, but it was all black-furred animals like a horse and a bull, basically. Which I found kind of fun, because when I looked in there, when they brought in the characters that were supposed to represent the Black Panthers, I was like, I think it would have been I think it would have been a little too on the nose to say, yeah, that's the animal version of the Black Panthers in this comic, isn't it? We also have this movie in here that Blacksad goes to see, which is like a science fiction movie version of them, and I actually laughed out loud when they showed that the president in that movie was a bald eagle, and I laughed out loud. I was like, that's way too on the nose. That's funny. I just find stuff like that very funny. But in here, you do get this. I feel like this mystery was a lot more intriguing than the first one. Not to say the first one was a bad mystery or anything. It just kind of I felt like it wrapped up a little too quickly, but I know I didn't cover that in the first part, but that story was really intriguing nonetheless. This story, however, really just steps its game up. John is doing the Blacksad. John Blacksad is pretty much doing this all for this little girl. He's not doing it for the money. He's not doing it because, he wants to make these people suffer as much as he'd like to make them suffer, and he does make them suffer at one point or another. But he's doing this all for this little girl who he just prays that she's alive, and he wants to do the right thing, even though he's not the greatest of role models. That's the thing. Like, he knows he is not a good person, but he wants to be a good person and try to rescue this little girl, no matter what he has to come across. And Weeks is an interesting character. Weeks is he's kind of annoying. But I wouldn't say he's like Jar Jar Binks level annoying. He does have a lot of redeeming qualities. He does help Blacksad through thick and thin, and also proves to be a good source of information as well. He has these funny quips, and him and Blacksad's unity is there. These two slowly but surely become friends, and I really hope in the next story, because I haven't read it yet, the third story in this book called Red Soul, he's in there as well, because I've heard that he's also in the fourth book called A Silent Hell, and that one's not collected in here. That one was just recently, this year, released, so I'll have to go looking for A Silent Hell eventually. But first I want to get through these books. But all in all, same as the first one, find this hardcover of Blacksad. It's really good. This story is really good. Arctic Nation so far is my favorite of the three, but that may change when I read Red Soul. So this is just all around a really good book series, and I'm glad I finally have been able to read it. It's just been this story especially, with all the twists and turns and the mystery behind it, involving this little girl and her connections to Karup, the police chief, like I said, and just how Blacksad just makes these white supremacist groups just pay, like he makes them suffer. and he's a total badass about it too. Like I said in the previous book, if Blacksad in here is pretty much Spike Spiegel if he was a cat. That's what I'm gonna say. So yeah, once again, go out, buy this book. And there is one thing I want to mention also. Like I said before, artwork is fantastic. That's another thing I needed to have mentioned earlier. The artwork in here is just eye-opening. Like, it's beautifully and crafted to perfection. I had a little brain fart there. Excuse me. And I do love looking at all the detail of this book. I mean, even the blood is painted very well. Every little detail is just shown fantastically. And there's actually a one scene in here I want to run by real quick. There is one scene in here where Blacksad is looking out of the city of the line, called the Line, and he's crouched on top of this old train station, and he's looking out to the city, and I'm thinking, and it looks just like a image of Batman. It looks exactly like an image of Batman sitting on top of a building, crouched in that position. And he's wearing a trench coat, and is like, it looks like he's wearing a cape all around him. But I'm like, and I'm sitting here laughing like, he looks like Batman. And that's probably where just a little inspiration came from, especially with this crime detective story. But definitely, it's more inspired by noir stuff. And like I said before, in the previous book, this comic is not for kids. This is a not for kids comic. I have to stress that again. So, yeah, once again, I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and, yeah, I'll be back to review the third story, eventually, of Blacksad, Red Soul. So, stay tuned for that.